So I'm over 50. I have a 3-month-old baby, and it's after 9 p.m., so I don't know what you're going to get from me tonight. So my story starts with the young Mark Mervine. I was about 22 years old. I had a roommate. He was a thief. He'd steal things. And he would go out and he'd break in cars, and he stole a pair of rollerblades. And he brought them home, and it didn't fit him, and so I got a new pair of rollerblades. And so one day I decided I was going to go out and I was going to try them out. And I'd go out my house, and I'd go down the street and turn the corner, and whoop, whoop. Wow, very good. Okay. And yeah, that was actually the sound of the police. And they were after me. And I'm thinking, holy crap, I got stolen rollerblades. Oh, man. Lots going through my head. He, gets out, he walks up, he says, sir, do you know why I stopped you? And I'm like, no, have no clue, stolen rollerblades. And so he says, you are rollerblading on a public highway. That's illegal. And I'm like, man, everybody else does that. I've never seen you pull anybody over for rollerblading. All the kids play in the street, and they ride their bikes and whatever. And, I don't know the law. I'm respectful. And, yes, sir. I'm sorry. I'm apologetic. And he says, you're going to have to take those off and walk home. And I'm like, it's kind of hot out, and the sidewalk's a little warm, but yes, sir, absolutely. So, took them off, started walking, and he started following me to make sure that I didn't actually go around the corner and put them back on. And so I went home, and I thought, that was really bizarre. That doesn't happen to people. I've never heard of that happening to anybody. So back in the early days, there wasn't the internet, so I called the Virginia State Police, and I said, tell me, educate me, help me out, help me understand, what was I doing wrong here? What law was I breaking? And they sent me something in the mail. A little business card came like a week later, and some papers, and they highlighted the section of the law, 46.2, yada, 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 says that you're not allowed to play on a public highway. So play, keyword, and highway, keyword, right? So how do I get around this law so that I can continue my rollerblading? Yes, I came up with a plan. Didn't take long. Got it. So, a short while later, I put my rollerblades on, I go out my door, and I go down the street, and I turn the corner, and whoop, whoop. And would you know it? It's the same police officer. Now, I'm like, what are the odds of this? This is crazy. Police officer gets out of his car, and he says, you look familiar to me. Have I stopped you before? Yes, sir. And you're rollerblading on a public highway again. And I'm like, no, sir. I am using my rollerblades as my mode of transportation. I'm on my way to Parkview High School to watch a baseball game. And this is not a highway, it's a secondary road. So what's the problem? And this was an older officer, veteran officer, and we had some discussions. And, I'm thinking to myself, I know I am well within the law. Like, I am totally legal. Let's forget that they're stolen. Totally legal. He doesn't know that. He didn't figure out the first time. I'm good this time on that. And so we start to kind of banter back and forth and argue over the 46.2 yada, yada, yada code. And he starts getting a little irritated with me, this punk young kid who seems to know more than the officer. And he says, what if I just write you a ticket? I'm just going to give you a ticket. How about that? And I go, yeah, absolutely. How about you write me a ticket? So I kind of called his bluff, right? We just kind of kept egging each other on until he actually wrote the ticket. And I'm like, my God, this guy actually wrote me a ticket for rollerblading. Craziness. And so he writes the ticket, and I look at it. He's like, I need you to sign it. And, I'm young and still dumb, and I don't know the law in that part. I'm thinking, well, you only sign it because you're making sure the information's accurate. Right? Okay. So I look at it and I go, the information's not right. You wrote it on the highway. I'm not on the highway. Highway's over there. So no, I'm not signing this ticket. And he said, yes, you will. And I said, no, I won't. And so he pushes me on the hood of the car, and he starts to handcuff me. And I'm like, ooh, my, this escalated. And he gets a cuff on, and he starts to get the second one. And I'm thinking, I don't know the law on this. I don't want to go to jail. All right, man, I'll sign your ticket. That's cool. I'll see you in court. And he's like, yes. And on the back of his head, he's probably going, holy crap, I just wrote this kid a ticket for rollerblading. I can't believe I just did that. So I go home, I prepare, I get my day in court, I show up. I've got all my paperwork I got from the Virginia State Police, got the little business card with the guy's name on it. I put my only suit that I had on, and I go in the courtroom, and they call me up, and I stand up there, and the judge asks him, what are the details? I got stopped for this. I was rollerblading on a public highway, and that's illegal, right? And then she comes to me, and she asks, what do you have to say about your case, Mr. Mervine? And I lay it out. I mean, I had all the papers laid out. I'm quoting stuff from the law books, and I've got dictionary stuff. I'm saying definitions of words, and I'm flashing the Virginia State Police guy's card, and I got a whole case. I'm good. I'm on top of this. And when I was done, she's like, okay, got it. She did have to correct me that if I'm going to use a dictionary, I can't use Webster's in a court of law. It has to be like a law dictionary or something. And I'm like, oh yeah, great. Noted for the next time I'm in court. And so she goes back to the officer and says, is there anything you'd like to add? And he's like, no, that's about it. And she says, okay, well, Mr. Mervine, thank you for coming to court today. All the charges are dropped. You're free to go. And I'm kind of feeling good. I'm like, this is awesome. This is my day. Cool. And then I start to kind of pack up my stuff, and I start to kind of walk away, and I hear her address the officer of, I did not dismiss you. And she gets a little stern. And she starts going down this path of, you came to my courtroom today, you weren't prepared, you presented almost nothing to me, no notes, you were some mockery of the courtroom, the law, and she just went into this whole thing, just chewed this guy out. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that makes me feel really good. Veteran officer, young punk kid, I'm having a good day. So there's these little swinging doors in the courtroom there, and I kind of push the swinging doors open, and I start walking down the aisle as I'm leaving, and I'm feeling really good about myself, and I start to hear like people in the audience kind of like golf clapping, and I'm like, oh yeah, hey, right on. And then people start cheering for me, and I'm like, yes, thank you. And I'm up here looking down at everybody going, oh, this is my day. And then of course the judge get everybody settled down. Hey, this is court of law. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Refocus. Finish walking out of the courtroom. Be respectable. Go about my business. So that was my first time in a court of law. I've been in the court of law several times thereafter for various things, including jail. But that's another story for another day. But this story, was first told 5 years ago, and it continues to kind of grow. So the night that I told this story 5 years ago, in the audience was the current Loudoun County Clerk of Courts. And he came to me afterward and said, hey, I know who that officer probably was. And he goes, and I remember those little swinging doors. They're not there anymore, but I remember those. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's pretty cool. He's like, what's the officer's name? And I said, well, his name was Officer McCracken. And at the time, I didn't really know much about this guy other than he was a veteran officer. He'd been around a long time, seemed to know everybody in the courtroom. And so I did a little research a little while after, and I found out that he died recently. And he had 36 years as a police officer. And the day that he ran into me was 35 years into that career. And I feel like I egged him on into that ticket. And we just kind of egged each other on until he actually wrote the ticket. And I'm pretty sure it's the only ticket ever written in Loudoun County about rollerblading on a public highway. And so I looked at his obituary and I read it. And buried deep down in there were two items that stood out to me. The first one was that he enjoyed storytelling. How would he have ever guessed that I'm telling the story about him? And the second piece that really kind of caught my eye was he was a jokester. He loved to tell jokes and be funny. And I'd like to tell you, Mr. McCracken, the joke's on you that day. I got you.
So much for the golden future, I can't even stop.